Um, this is my demo for the final research implementation for the module real-time rendering. So this demo is of parallax mapping. I'm going to demo a couple different versions of parallax mapping. So the first version of parallax, so this first of all is just a flat plane that has a normal map applied to it, with no parallax mapping involved. So I'm going to show you the basic version of parallax mapping now. So this is basic parallax mapping, where the texture coordinate display is being approximated by finding the value and depth map at the intersection of the view vector and the surface plane, and going along the view vector for that distance into the surface, and calculating the texture coordinates at that point on the surface plane. So you can see that some of the texture reads are incorrect here. This will become more obvious as we increase the height, or the depth of the simulated depth. So here, the deeper it goes, the more incorrect the texture reads are. But as we reduce the depth, it becomes reasonably, it has reasonably good performance. And again, this is even better if we go to a steep viewing angle, and now we can reduce it even more with less of those incorrect texture reads. So this is steep parallax mapping now. So the depth, or the simulated depth, is 0, so I'll increase that a bit. So here we can see, we're not at a particularly steep viewing angle, but we can see the steps between each of the, or we can see the gaps between each of the steps. Now this is because we're only using 5 steps at the moment, so I'll increase the step size to 23, and that effect more or less disappears. Now if we go down to a steeper viewing angle again, you can see the steps slightly, but I'll increase the distance between steps and they'll become more visible. So there's a trade-off between the distance between the steps and how many steps that you have to use. So if you're using a big distance between steps, they're going to be visible a lot quicker. And you can also see the frame rate at the top of the screen, where we're in the sort of 400 frames per second range. And of course this is dependent on how many steps we're using. So I'll reduce the number of steps a bit, and it hasn't had too much of an effect, but I think that might also be impacted by other processes running on my computer at the moment. So we'll go back up. So I'll show you parallax occlusion mapping now. So here we are with parallax occlusion mapping. The effect of the gaps between steps has been reduced a bit. We're at quite, I'm going to reduce the distance between them. So you can see, if you reduce the distance between steps, the interpolation between them is effective at reducing the size of the gaps. So here you can't see gaps between steps, but that is because we're using quite a lot of steps and a relatively small gap. But if we were to go back to steep parallax mapping, you can see the effect of steps. So I'll toggle back into occlusion mapping. There we go, and the steps disappear. So I'll reduce the number of steps to around 6 there. And again, you can see the frame rates are in the roughly 400 frames per second range. So I'll stop narrating now and I'll swap over to other models just to walk through other textures just to walk through and show how they work. So this is another texture that's commonly used with parallax mapping, whereas the last texture was a high definition texture that I downloaded myself from Quixelbridge. So it's just come to my attention that the screen recording tool I'm using isn't capturing the heading of this window, but in the heading of this window it shows the frames per second and the milliseconds between frames. So in the report you'll be able to see that. This is the last texture that I'll show.